Well, it's the day you've all been waiting for. It's player evaluation day. You, the Locked On Angel listeners, gave us your player evals. You pulled out the red pen and you gave us a grade, and we're going to share all of the results today. You're Locked On with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Whew, man, it feels like report card day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, and you can give us a rate and a review, not with your red pin, but with 5 stars. And you can do that on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
I always got good report cards. And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we want to get right into the grades that you submitted. Thank you to everybody who responded. We had over 130 responses, Mike, so we have a good field of grades here. Let's start with Mr. David Fletcher, Michael.
Fletch. All right, let's talk about Fletch, baby. So the overall score, we're going to lean to the side if you're watching on YouTube. The overall score for David Fletcher out of 5 was a 3.5. You guys gave him a B-. Here's some of the comments that you said about Fletch this season. Great when healthy, underrated, and then, of course, contact king. So a 3.5 for David Fletcher. He got a B- grade. I'm going to have to agree with that, Johnny. When he is healthy, he's probably an A player for us. But because he was not healthy this year, he was a B-. But when he did come back, boy, was he good, right? Didn't he just bring fire to this offense?
Absolutely, yeah. He was great at the top of the order and the bottom of the order. So David Fletcher, hopefully we get a full, healthy season from him. Let's go to Livan Soto. He shall be Livan, and he shall have a good grade. He got a 3.5, a B-. I like the comments here, Mike. Potential, small sample size, but the future is bright for Livan Soto. You and I think that he could factor in to that middle infield come next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I love him. I get to talk about Michael Trout. So let's talk about his grades. And if it's not good, then I'm going to be ticked. So 4.6 was his score out of 5. Of course, he got an A grade. Somebody said he was the GOAT. And
That's
then,
right.
Of course, please stay healthy, Mike Trout. And then I loved this comment. He's Mike Trout.
He's Mike Trout,
obviously.
And
that's how we feel about Trout, right? And I went and looked at his stats today. I had a break while I was working, and I just went to baseballreference.com, and I looked at his 40 home runs and 80 RBIs from this season. Just 119 games. And so there's always that what if with Trout. So we're hopeful that he actually can play a whole lot more next season, maybe even get to 50 home runs. No pressure, buddy, but that would be really awesome to see.
Absolutely. Hey, here was a surprise of the season. This was my breakout player of 2022. Luis Rengifo got a 4.5. You guys gave him an A grade. I love that. Some of the comments said breakout year, most improved, my favorite, beefy geefy, Michael. Beefy geefy. And I agree with that. Breakout year, certainly for Luis Rengifo, kind of the year that we've been waiting for. Most improved. I think that is also true because of how much he took strides this season.
Yeah, he was great this year. You know who else was great? Was Taylor Ward. And he started off really great, was kind of struggling midway through, and then picked it up at the end of the season. Locked On Angel listeners gave him a 3.9 score out of 5, a B-. I think I agree with that because of his lack of being able to be productive when he was hurt and then during the losing streak. Breakout season is what somebody said, promising 2023, and literally hit a wall, Johnny, and that's really what slowed him down, unfortunately. But I agree with that grade. I think that Taylor Ward had a B- season, and he's got the potential to be an A+ player.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully he stays away from the walls in 2023. Here's somebody who struggled with injuries this season as well. Jared Walsh, who you and I love at first base, Mike. Unfortunately, the injuries hampered him this season. He got a 2.76. That's a C- on the grading scale. And that's understandable because while he was injured, he got a lot of strikeouts. But here's some comments from our listeners. Get healthy, excellent defense. I definitely agree with that. And then don't forget that he hit for the cycle. Jared Walsh did that back in June. That was awesome. That was the first day that they wore the City Connect jerseys, I believe, as well. So that was pretty exciting to see him get that and hit for the cycle in the new uniforms.
Yeah, Walshy's great. His defense is great. Somebody who needs to improve on his defense is Joe Adele. And we talked about that a lot this season. And based off of your grades as listeners, you really struggled with Joe this season as well. 2.4 was his score, a D plus. Do D's exist anymore? He got a D plus. Needs confidence, kind of disappointing, and needs a breakout. I think that your overall score for Joe is right on the money. I agree with you because I would love to see Joe improve. There were times where he looked great, Johnny, diving catches, hitting home runs, jumping over the fence, doing his best Mike Trout impression. But then there were times where the ball went over his head or it went by him. You remember the game where him and Marsh were in the outfield and they played left field and the ball was just kind of ricocheting everywhere.
Yes.
And they were chasing it down like little Smurfs going after Gargamel. You know, like it was just it was like that pull. And so, yeah, he needs to work on his defense. I agree with that score 100%.
And he collided with Jack Mayfield in that one game where it was just like in the middle of the losing streak. It was just a disaster. Hey, let me talk about Max Stassi, somebody who was rather disappointing, did not have as great of a season as last year. Locked On Angels listeners gave him the score of 2.07. That amounts to a D grade. Some of the comments were inconsistent, which is true, underwhelming, which is also true. And then my favorite comment was, what happened? What happened to Max Stassi?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It really is, because it's kind of a mystery why he fell off so much. He just didn't seem to have the power that he had last season. He didn't seem to be able to throw out runners like he did last season. So just a lot of question marks around Max Stassi. Hopefully with Logan O'Hoppe, it'll get him to be more competitive and a better catcher behind the plate.
Speaking of catching, the Zook Nuke, Kurt Suzuki, last season, also got to manage a little bit this year, but these grades are not a reflection of that. So his score was 2.4. It's a D plus. He was better than 2021 is what somebody said. Great leader. And of course, enjoy retirement. Listen, Suzuki was not expected to be somebody that was going to produce in a really productive way. We just knew that he would fill in for Stassi. Unfortunately, Stassi had such a terrible year that we needed to rely on Kurt a little bit more. And when he was in there, Johnny, I'm going to say it. I've been a great critic of Kurt Suzuki. I really was thankful that he was in there because I think he brought some stability to the catching position, but also had a couple of great knocks during the season this season.
Absolutely. Yeah. He hit a couple of Zook nukes, and just honestly, the send-off that we gave him and the A's gave him, that was great as well. And it was just, he's had a long career, caught some really talented pitchers along the way. And I think he really helped a lot of our young arms along the way as well. Let's talk about Anthony Rendon.
Okay.
Locked On Angels listeners gave him a score of 2.04. That amounts to a D grade. And the comments, of course, reflect always hurt and great when healthy. And I agree with those comments.
Yeah.
My favorite comment, Mike, was Jesse Winker. Because as we all know, he got slapped by the cast by Anthony Rendon during the fight. But hopefully we get a healthy Rendon. And now that we have some infield depth, I think that we can have some backup there as well behind him.
I will always remember the left-handed home run in the game that Reed Detmers pitched the no-hitter.
My gosh.
That was
incredible.
Johnny, let's talk about Matt Duffy. I was actually pretty high on Matt Duffy when he signed with the Angels. I thought he was a great backup. Unfortunately, we had to rely upon him more than just a backup. 2.9 was the score that Locked On Angel listeners gave him. C-. They said decent, good role player, better second half. 100% agree. Those are good numbers and good comments about Matt Duffy.
Yeah, Duffy is somebody that, was going to be a serviceable infielder and back up the likes of David Fletcher and whoever we were rolling at shortstop. He's had to play a lot of third, a lot of first base just to fill in those gaps. And finally, Michael, speaking of the infield and great defense, I'm trying to find my graphic here. There's a lot of players here I got to dig through. But we're going to talk about Andrew Velasquez. Where did he go?
Squid is great. Listen, that was such a bummer to see him go down when he hurt his knee.
Yeah.
And the thing about Squid is that his defense is so strong, but his bat wasn't. And him batting right-handed, not being a switch hitter this last season, I wonder if that actually might be a great direction for him to go. Why don't you read off what Locked On Angel listeners gave him for a score?
They gave him a 2.83 grade, a C minus, and they said great defense, no bat, which I agree with, and not a starter. So kind of like what you were saying, maybe a utility role there. So that's it for the starting lineup. But you may have noticed we're missing somebody, and that's Shohei Ohtani. So you need to stay tuned for Shohei's grades coming up right here.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, and podcast, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find at BetOnline. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sporting wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores and everything that's out there, every sport that's out there, they've got information on there. So you should go to BetOnline today. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the baseball playoffs, MMA, boxing, and golf. Why don't you go there right now? BetOnline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline is where the game starts.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now, Michael, it's time to get into the rotation and the relief corps. We're going to be talking about our guy, Shohei Ohtani. Why don't you take these grades?
Awesome. Shohei Ohtani got a 4.99 score, got an A+. There must be Aaron Judge fans out there. 4.99 should be a 5. MVP, the unicorn, the GOAT. Yes, Shohei Ohtani is incredible. In fact, he was just interviewed yesterday by Jeff Fletcher about this last season and the potential for next season. And his words were not, the organization needs to do something. His words were, I just need to be better.
He's so humble. It's ridiculous how humble he is. He makes the rest of us look bad. Hey, Mike, let me talk about my boy, Patrick Sandoval, somebody I've been a fan of for a very long time. Locked On Angels listeners gave him a score of 4.1, which equates to a B. And the top comment was, run support. Give this man some run support, please. They said that he was a solid starter and also improving, and I agree with that. Much better season than last year, even though last year was pretty good, but I could see Patrick Sandoval getting even better, Michael.
Yeah, I really have not been a Sandoval fan when he first came up. You have won me over with all of your fandom. But the guy that I was a fan of before he even came up and was fighting for him to come up is Reed Detmers.
Yes.
And he had a great year. He had the no-hitter and he had the immaculate inning.
Yes.
He had a score of 4 from Locked On Angel listeners, gave him a B. I think those are good numbers and grades. Comments were no-hitter, future ace, and then somebody said, Buddy Carlisle. And he's the AAA pitching coach that helped get Reed Detmers back on track when he went down. So 100% agree with this, and I'm a huge fan of Reed Detmers. I can see him being a huge ace for our team. Kind of reminds me of Greg Maddux, but a lefty, because he doesn't have overpowering stuff, but he spots his stuff so well, Johnny.
Definitely. Let me talk about El Demente, Jose Suarez. In fact, that was the top comment that Locked On Angels listeners left was El Demente. They gave him a score of 3.51. That equates to a B-. They said he was promising and a good 4th, 5th, or 6th. I saw a lot of different comments about where his spot in the rotation is. And I think that's a good place for him. I think 4 through 6, he could totally fit in somewhere. But yeah, B-. I'd say that's a pretty good grade from Locked On Angels listeners.
Johnny, let's talk about Biceps Lorenzen. Michael Lorenzen had a lot of potential this season, looked really good, then got hurt. Locked On Angel fans gave him a 3.1 score. That's a C grade. He was better than expected, did have a great attitude, and there it is, Johnny. Biceps with an exclamation point. I'd love to see this guy come back. I'd love to see him sign maybe a 1 or 2 year deal. I think he could be a great 4 in our rotation and perhaps having Jose Suarez be 5. But I'd love to see Michael Lorenzen back on this team next season.
Mike, I'm going to let you talk about this guy because you've been high on him all season long, and that is Chase Silseth.
I like Chase Silseth, and I think he should be up next season as well. He got a 2.6 score, a C-. Some of the comments were he needs more time, showed promise, maybe 2 years away. I don't know if I agree with the 2 years away. I think that he could be a great guy for us next season. I think he could be our Patrick Sandoval next season, where maybe he doesn't get the run support, but he's actually in every game and he's still kind of figuring some things out. But this guy really impressed me, and I'd love to see him in this rotation next season.
I'll talk about Tucker Davidson as our last starter. He got a score of 1.98 from Locked On Angels listeners. That was a D-. Some of the comments were meh. Flashes of goodness, but he's not ready and he needs more time. Mike, he was willing to make adjustments along the way and he's figuring things out. So I don't think these grades are that far off and these comments are not that far off. Needs more time. He's shown flashes of stuff that's good, right?
Yeah, I think Tucker does need to improve, but he is shown the desire to want to improve. Speaking of somebody that we thought was going to be a great improvement for the bullpen and ended up not being, that was Aaron Loop, who Johnny affectionately called Aaron Poop when he blew the game the other night. He got a 2.1 score, a D, and comments are right on the money. Not what we paid for. Big letdown. And again, in the same vein as Max Stassi, what happened to this guy? He did improve as the season was kind of coming to an end, but he was not the same guy that he was with the Mets. Had an ERA under 1 with the Mets, but with us, he did not put up those numbers. So he was a great disappointment. And speaking of disappointment, John, would you put Ryan Tepera in that same category?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Ryan Tepera do a little bit better this season. Locked On Angels listeners gave him a 2.78 grade, which equates to a C-. And the comments are kind of what you expect. Average, somewhat decent, but inconsistent, I think, was his biggest problem. Inconsistency, really. He's got a good attitude. He's got a fiery attitude, but he doesn't have the stuff to back it up sometimes, in my opinion.
Yeah. The next 4 guys we're kind of hyped on because they are, except for one, kind of homegrown guys. Andrew Wantz was somebody that we thought would really be a key piece in this bullpen, but because of injuries and because of other issues, he wasn't able to be in there all the time. He got a 3 score, got a C grade, solid bullpen arm, progression better than last season. I agree with that. I just think that this guy has the potential to be more than what he is at a E grade. And so I'm hopeful that he actually can improve. And speaking of improving, John, you're going to talk about Jaime Barria, who I think was the hero of the bullpen because this guy filled his role so beautifully, so perfectly. He was a former starter, and then we needed him in long relief. And he was great at coming in and cleaning up the mess. And I know that that's not like a sexy role to play, but coming in and cleaning up the mess in games where you needed to eat some innings was actually, it seemed to be the perfect role for Jaime.
Yeah, Jaime Barria got a 3.36 score from listeners, C+ grade. Some of the comments were good long reliever, a solid bullpen arm, and I like this one a lot, Mike, the unsung hero. I think that's a great way of identifying what Jaime Barria was able to do this season. He was out of options, but he stayed in the bullpen and gave us long relief outings and helped get us to the end of some games. So really excited to see Jaime Barria improve this season.
Yeah, Jimmy Herget was actually somebody that really was a surprise this year. He's the human glitch. He was our closer by committee, but really was in the 9th inning more than anybody else. Got a 4.22 from you Locked On Angel listeners, a B grade, most reliable, find of the year, and there it is, human glitch. And he was that, and he really did improve. And so I hope that he's a part of this bullpen next season because I think he's a great arm, a good strong arm for us, and he throws from so many different angles that he can throw off batters in a regular way. And I think he's a great offset for the next guy that we're going to be talking about, Johnny, and that is Jose Quijada, who at the end really kind of struggled a little bit.
Yeah, in fact, Locked On Angels listeners gave him a 3.29, which is a C grade. They said some nice things. He's got good energy. He's explosive. But you and I have said this all along, Mike. He needs another pitch. He does not have that third pitch. He's been going fastball, changeup. We've seen like an occasional slider, I think, but not enough to really count upon that.
Needs to have more, sure.
He's not fooling anybody at this point of the season. So I think he's been figured out. If he can develop a third pitch, I think he could be really effective.
Well, that was the lineup and the starters and the bullpen, but there are other guys that played some key roles in this last season. Johnny, can I talk about Mike Ford? Now,
heck yeah.
I might be alone in this, but I was a Mike Ford fan, maybe because he looked like Napoli, and he just, every time he got up there, he looked like the guy on the MLB The Show that you have a potential of hitting a home run or a weak ground ball to second base, right? And so I liked him at first base. He was a great fill-in for a time. Got a 2.5 score from listeners, a C minus. Again, fine fill-in. He was a non-factor, and somebody put "shh, Yankees." And so I love that when Ford did hit the home run, that's what he said to the Yankee bullpen when they were playing them. So maybe he comes back and he's some depth for us. I think he's a great depth piece, but he isn't somebody that you want to see starting on a regular basis.
Right. And exactly. He came up and just filled that role while Jared Walsh was down. And so it was important for us to have somebody over there at first base. And he did a decent job. And maybe we'll see him again. I know that he was sent down. Mike, next up we have Michael Stefanik. Again, I've lost my graphic here.
That's all right. Michael Stefanik actually is somebody that's intriguing to, I think, a lot of listeners, because Stefanik has all of this hype behind him when he was in the minor leagues. Great bat. Some people said that maybe he didn't have really great defense. When he came up, he seemed to be pretty consistent. I know his average didn't show that, or his stat line didn't show that, but talk about the score that Locked On Angel listeners gave him.
Yeah, he got a 2.5, which is good for a C minus. And the comments were he needs more time, he needs more at bats, and he's not quite ready yet. And I agree with that. I think that he could benefit from a nice spring training and perhaps getting some at bats before we see him again in 2023.
We're going to talk about two catchers that filled in. The first is Chad Wallach, son of Tim Wallach, who I met one time while working at a radio station. So just want to throw that out there. That's a flex. He got a 2.5 from Locked On Angel listeners, a C minus. He caught the no-hitter. We didn't get to see him enough, and he needs more opportunity. I really agree with that last comment. I'd love to see him up and have more opportunity. I know with O'Hoppe and Stassi, he may not get that, but there was something about him, John, that made me think I think he's a solid catcher. And speaking of catching, Matt Thaiss was somebody who not only would catch, but he could play around the diamond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he got a 3.02 score from Locked On Angels listeners, which is good for a C grade. And the comments said he had a much better season, and better than anything we've seen in the past. There's potential for the future with Matt Thaiss. And somebody said better than Stassi and Suzuki. So a couple of comments about how they'd much rather see him play over Stassi and Suzuki this season. And I think I agree with that. I think that he really showed out when he came up and, like you said, played all over the diamond.
Yeah. All right, here's the heartbreaking conversation. We're going to talk about Captain Caveman.
We've got a
Brandon
few of these.
Marsh, who was traded away, and Angel fans gave him a 2.9 score, a C minus, and you feel like I feel. You miss him. He did have a lot of strikeouts, and I agree. Somebody said we won that trade. I think we did win that trade. We're going to talk about Marsh on Monday, actually, but Brandon has really improved with the Phillies. I miss him. I miss his energy. I miss his excitement. Watching him in the clubhouse when they were popping the champagne, jumping around and laughing was actually really cool to see. So good luck to Brandon Marsh in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. Hey, let's take a look at Magneuris Sierra. Listeners gave him a 2.48 score. That's good for a D+. And some of the comments were great defender. He had some clutch moments that I kind of forgot about, that he was pretty clutch in some situations, and amazing speed. And but he also was DFA'd and sent back to AAA. So fortunately, the Angels were able to hold on to him, and maybe he can be a defensive help next season.
Yeah, we made another trade. We traded Noah Syndergaard, and a part of that trade was Mickey Moniak. He's a Moniak. You guys gave him a 3.1 score, a C grade. Comments are lots of potential, like his upside. Poor kid, because he did get hurt a lot. He got hurt when his finger got hurt and then his hand, and so he had to be out for the rest of the year. But there's something about Mickey that I really like, Johnny, and so I'd love to see him get an opportunity in spring training, and maybe he's the depth piece that we keep talking about. If we don't go out and sign some players, he might be the guy that can play left field behind Joe Adell, play center field when Trout needs a rest. I like Mickey Moniak.
I do too. Somebody else I really like, and we didn't get enough of this season, was Archie Bradley. Fans gave him a 2.36 grade, a D+ grade. And comments were good up until the injury. He can't jump the fence. That was a funny comment. That's how he hurt his arm during the fight. But I like this one. They said swag. And yes, Archie Bradley was certainly the only one on the team who had some swag up until we saw like Rengifo and Suarez and stuff like that. But yeah, Archie Bradley with the beard and the earring and the cool haircut definitely got some swag. Hopefully his arm is okay. Maybe he's somebody we can bring back next season.
Speaking of bullpen pieces, Austin Warren was another one that we were excited about. Got a 2.4 grade, D+. Injuries hurt him. He was good when healthy. Somebody said 2023 bullpen. I'd love to see that as well. I think he's got more of an upside than Andrew Wantz does. And so Austin Warren has shown to be somebody that when he is healthy, he can be really good for this Angels bullpen.
Absolutely. Hey, so somebody else who was in the bullpen was Jose Marte that we got a couple of looks at. He actually came over in the New York trade for Andrew Heaney last season. And so we did get a little bit of a look at him, but Locked On Angels listeners gave him a 1.93 score, a D- grade. And I agree with these comments. They like the velo. He's not very good. And what's a strike? Because, man, he could just not locate his pitches. And so if he learned to get some control, Mike, I think he could be a big arm in that bullpen.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. He was also needed to be corrected by Trout in center field because he was tipping his pitches. So
yes,
you did this on purpose. So I'm mad at you. You're making me talk about Mike Myers. He got a 1.7 score. I'm surprised he even got a 1. D-. He's inconsistent. He got DFA'd. Somebody put Halloween kills.
Yes.
So Mike Myers killed us this season. Had a couple of moments where he started really well, but he is just so inconsistent. You can't count on him, and he needs to figure out who he is, and we need to figure out if we're going to bring him back, what we would do with him. I don't think he comes back.
I'm over it
because he's so messy, Johnny.
Yeah, there are much better options out there. Oliver Ortega was a great bullpen piece for most of the season. Early on, that is, a 2.23 score from Locked On Angels listeners. They gave him a D grade. They said it was a good start, but a bad end, and I agree with that. They also said needs to cook, which I think he could benefit from some more time. Also, another issue of throw strikes, hit that zone, get some command. I think that's also very true of Oliver Ortega as it was with Jose Marte.
Another guy we're going to talk about on Monday is Raisel Iglesias. He was traded to Atlanta, and Tucker Davidson was a part of that deal. And Raisel actually was on fire for the Braves in the bullpen. More on that on Monday. But you guys scored him a 2.8, a C-. He was better with the Braves. He did have 6 blown saves. And then somebody said, points to the sky, because every time he would get a save, he would point up to the sky. I miss him. I like him. I'll always remember when he threw all of the seeds out into the field during that whole brouhaha against Seattle. So Raisel Iglesias, good dude. Good luck with the Braves.
Totally a luxury because we wanted him for the next couple of years and had to spend a lot of money on him. But unfortunately, it's just not in the cards right now. Hey, let's talk about Touki Toussaint, who Locked On Angels listeners gave a 2.14 score to, a D grade. They said he needs better control. So most people were indifferent to him and also found him to not be very reliable, Mike.
Yeah, Touki, it seems like a nice guy, but you know who was a really nice guy to have on our team was Noah Syndergaard.
That's right.
He had a 3.1 score, got a C from you guys. He's recovering. He struggled with runners on base, and a lot of you have said you'd love to see him come back. He's with the Phillies right now. Actually had a really good run with the Phillies, is in the playoffs, and I would love to see Noah Syndergaard come back again next season as well.
Last but not least, we had him for a while, and then he was gone. Mr. Tyler Wade. Locked On Angels listeners gave him a score of 1.95. That's good for a D-. And the comments, speedy, true. Handsome, true. And somebody said pants too tight.
Everybody's talking about my tight pants.
I can tell you that my wife disagrees about the pants too tight comments. She misses Tyler Wade.
Well, what Abby says, it goes, I guess, right? Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today, and thanks for taking our survey. All of your numbers and grades were spot on. We appreciate you guys. You guys are great, great listeners. Now, after this show, make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast with solely Paul Francis Sullivan. Follow the #1 daily legal aid podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, we're going to be posting these on social media, so if you want to see these graphics in person, or if you want to be able to share them with friends or check them out, you can go to Twitter at Locked On Angels. You can also catch us at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, what do we have on deck for Monday's show?
We're checking in on the Halos that are in the playoffs. We're going to talk about 4 specific players, 3 that were on our team and traded from this season, and then some other guy named Albert Pujols. So we're going to check in to see how they did when they left the Halos and what the potential is for their teams to go far in the playoffs. That's coming up Monday on Locked On Halos. Locked On
well, we
Angels.
hope you all. What's that?
I said Locked On Halos.
That's funny. Well, we hope we just need a weekend. That's all. We hope you guys have a great weekend, and thank you for being here with us. Thank you for submitting your grades. Until Monday, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
And we'll see you right back here on Monday for more Locked On Angels.